If I could get everybody away from watching the TV for a second, that would be really nice. But oh, I'm sorry. Maybe we could do it open. Anyway, I'm Steve Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
And I'm Anthony Strait on this busy Monday. I have one eye on you guys, half an eye on the Jets, and about a third of the eye on the Yankees. Okay, and my and my
What?
and my blood and my blood pressure still coming down for the end of the Mets game. Okay,
I love how you say the blood pressure's coming down in the Mets game. The tying run never actually even came up. Anyway, this is the On the Sports Lines LCS preview show, whatever this is tonight. I've been always told, why are you so biased? Why do you base the show on New York sports? Well, one, we live in New York, and two, this is the center of the sports universe this week, so suck it, fake people I may have made up in the last sentence. Yeah. Anyway, with the New York local teams, both in the LCS for the first time in 24 years, we'll talk about the championship series from our local perspective and a little bit on the other side as well. And we'll also talk about the two local football teams that have hosted primetime games on the same weekend too. As Tupac says, all eyes on New York. He said all eyes on me, but they're easily interchangeable. Don't worry about it. Okay. We'll start with the laughing at New York because, well, the Jets will suck enough to often weigh down the averages here in the tri state area. So here we go. 6 days ago, the 3 season and change error, not era, in the Florham Park offices of the Jets came to an unceremonious end as Robert Saleh was relieved of whatever duties that he actually might have done over in Florham Park. Not sure if he had any left. An 18 and 33 first 3 seasons for Gang Green didn't seal his fate, though, but it was 2-3 start this season with a healthy Aaron Rodgers that did. Jay, with this, and we're going to talk specifically for your question about the corresponding move of Todd Downing calling the offensive plays now and not Nathaniel Hackett. Does this move the proverbial Neil here?
I don't think so. A little trivia for you guys before I jump in. Per ESPN research, Robert Saleh is now the third NFL coach who has been fired following a loss in London in the past decade. Dennis Allen was fired by the Raiders after losing to the Dolphins in 2014. Joe Philbin was fired by the Dolphins in 2015. Can you say?
By the way, that number might be 4 by the end of next week, because Doug Peterson is very much on the hot seat.
Very much so. As I said to you guys in our group chat, I think this was a vanity move by owner Woody Johnson because simply removing Robert Saleh and replacing him with defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich doesn't really move the needle. I don't know what games Johnson is watching, but to say on a conference call last week that this Jets team was the most talented he's ever assembled in New York, and he fired Saleh to give the team the best opportunity to win has me scratching my head, and I am not alone. 10 executives and coaches from other teams were polled by The Athletic about the decision to fire Saleh. None of them believe Saleh deserved to be fired so quickly, feeling that Johnson made a rash decision. One of them said, quote, win on Monday, tonight at home against Buffalo on Monday Night Football, and you're in first place in the AFC. Firing seems premature. Another one weighed in by saying 5 games into his first true season with Aaron Rodgers seems a little premature to me. While another executive said he wasn't sure what the firing really accomplishes since the defense and the offense stay the same, saying, quote, either something was happening behind the scenes or it was just a move to make a move and hoping something changes. And look, and while there were rumblings coming out of the Jets locker room after the loss to Minnesota and London, the vibes were off, and that Saleh was losing support, especially from defensive players who were frustrated with what was happening with the offense, despite having Aaron Rodgers under center, was making the same mistakes. The offense was making the same mistakes we all saw over the last few years, which led to wasted stellar defensive efforts. Looking unprepared to start games, committing too many penalties, something Anthony harped on ad nauseum last year, and questionable decision-making, especially something I harped on, especially Hackett's lack of attention to detail and inability to make in-game adjustments. Sound familiar? Saleh being on the hot seat was no surprise. I said previously on the show that if the Jets didn't make the playoffs this year, that Saleh would be gone. But I figured he'd be given a full season to try and make that happen. And if I'm Zach Wilson, I'm privately laughing my ass off. So, the Jets offense through the first 5 weeks has scored as many points, 93, with Rodgers under center as they did through 5 weeks last year with Wilson. What's interesting is that the first move that Ulbrich made after taking over was a move that Saleh supposedly was about to make, and that's to take offensive play calling duties away from offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett, who, according to sources, doesn't have a lot of support in the locker room or on the coaching staff, and many, including the three of us, have been frustrated with his play calling going back to last year, and give those duties to quarterback coach and passing game coordinator Todd Downing, who was the OC in Tennessee in 21 and 22, a move that Rodgers, by all accounts, did not fight. Now, I would have given Saleh the opportunity to make that change and see if it jump-started the offense. Yes, the Jets ranked 25th in points per game coming into tonight, 18.6, 27th in total offense, 286.6 yards per game, and last in rushing, 80.4 yards per game. Yes, the offensive line has been offensive in pass protection, especially over the last 2 weeks. And yes, the seeming refusal to run play-action concepts or pre-snap motion at anything remotely close to NFL average, Jets are 22nd in play-action use, 28 in motion use, doesn't help. But Rodgers being in almost total control of the offense and his vocal distaste for both play action and pre-snap motion is why I don't think it matters who calls the plays, because Rodgers has the final decision. And the things he doesn't want to do are the things that every successful NFL offense does in this day and age. Rodgers' ego is in control of the Jets offense, which is a big part of the problem because he's writing checks the rest of the unit can't cash, despite coming into tonight, despite winning 2 straight MVPs while running Matt LaFleur's offense in Green Bay, which had plenty of play action and pre-snap motion. Rodgers complained about his lack of control at the line of scrimmage to audible into other plays, saying on the Pardon My Take podcast in 2021 that, quote, "I'm not telling you guys anything I wouldn't tell LaFleur. I got after him today because every freaking play there's goddamn motion." I'm like, can we run one play without emotion and pass so we can get some tempo going? Because I like to switch the tempo. There's no I in team, Aaron, apparently, but you don't know that. Rodgers felt that, like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, he earned the right to have the entire offense in his hands and in the chess game with the opponent's defensive coordinator. Except that when he had that type of power in 2018 with Mike McCarthy, the Packers' static, pass-heavy offense suffered. 18th in the NFL in points per drive. And the Jets offense doesn't have the type of talent that Manning and Brady had under those circumstances that make that type of quarterback-centric offense work. Nor is Rodgers anywhere near who he was in those MVP years, getting totally whipped by Viking defensive coordinator Brian Flores in the chess match. In last week's chess match is just the latest proof. Both Downing and Hackett have historically called static offenses, which plays into what Rodgers wants to do, and then he'll still have the final say on what play the Jets actually run, no matter what Downing calls in. I can't see the Jets offense, which is currently 23rd in points per drive and offensive DVOA, getting much better no matter who the OC is or who even the head coach is, because Aaron Rodgers refuses to see that this offense cannot continue to live and mostly die with his ego calling the shots. And as I end the rant here, I am fully aware that having written this over the weekend, I'm going to somewhat have to eat my words when we get to the Jets segment later tonight.
Not necessarily. If the defense looks even worse,
stays
then
the way it does.
it's just moving the needle one way towards the other. Bills have a defense that has been torched over the last few weeks. One game does not make a whole season. It's really just 2 or 3 games. Anthony?
Yeah, but, Rabbi, you and I both know that there is a certain segment of the Jets fan base that's going to extrapolate this, even though there's no reasons for it.
To be fair, though, that certain section of the Jet fan base is very hopeful and will hope for any little nugget that actually comes back, because that's the way it is. Anyway, Anthony, what a week for the Jets. And this move just signifies a lot of Jets futility over the past few years.
Yeah.
It's actually not even just past few years. I'm sorry. Let me correct myself there for a moment.
Just a very, very long time. I can tell you that much. But you know what? I would say this. It's too bad Aaron Rodgers chose not to be RFK's running mate, because he had a really good future in being a politician, a lion, a backstabber, because I don't know if you saw his interview. I don't know if you saw him on Pat McAfee basically howling to wolf. He had nothing to do with Robert Saleh's fire, even though Woody Johnson confirmed he spoke to Aaron Rodgers the night before the firing actually took place. Are you kidding me?
So supposedly they didn't talk about that.
Yeah. From the moment the trade was made for Aaron Rodgers, this entire organization became Aaron Rodgers from the word go. And look, our good friend Joseph Farr brought this up many times, and we talked about the Jets over the last couple of years. They brought in some of Aaron Rodgers' buddies from Green Bay. They brought in the coordinator he wanted. They pretty much gave everything to him. Aaron Rodgers is the guy who tells his Achilles 4 plays into a season, who was not played well this season. I was at that game against Denver a couple of weeks ago, and you could have even I shook my head into some of the play calling that Nathaniel Hackett was using, particularly down the goal line, which is a bit of a head scratcher. But on top of that, Aaron Rodgers, and I'll talk about this later on in this segment too, because it was something I was really paying attention to in this game. Aaron Rodgers and these receivers have not been on the same page at all. And you think about this, Aaron Rodgers, it's pretty much been about him all along. I mean, he gets everything he wants. He misses it. He goes on a sabbatical instead of attending mandatory camp. Remember all this. Then remember the brush off the Robert Saleh on the
Egypt during
sideline.
OTAs.
It's pretty much been the Aaron Rodgers show from the moment he came in from New Jersey. Remember last year, Hard Knocks. Everything was surrounded around the Jets and Aaron Rodgers and Super Bowl talking aspirations. This has been the Jets' MO for the last 2 years, and Aaron Rodgers have been at the forefront of it. Remember the last 2 seasons in Green Bay, there was so much chatter going on. And when Jordan Love was drafted, and there was chatter with Aaron Rodgers then, Aaron Rodgers is proving and starting to show time and time again, he's not exactly the locker room guy you want to have. Around a young team, particularly a young team like the Jets has had with good young pieces. On top of that, he's not exactly you can't look to him to lead by example, because it's like, hey, look, if you're a leader and you lead by example, you show up the camp, not take a sabbatical trip and leave your teammates high and dry. On top of that, if you respected the head coach, you'd be probably defending him a little more. That definitely has not been the case, and it just almost seems like when you have Aaron Rodgers, it's everyone else's fault except Aaron Rodgers. Ironically enough, as Jay, you pointed out, his numbers and Zach Wilson's numbers are almost identical at this same point last year. I mean, that just tell you, by the way, he's been sacked 13 times. This offense is just like, it's been a mixed bag so far. Tonight, they're looking a lot better.
Yeah, ironically enough, they've actually run more motion tonight, which supposedly is something Rodgers hates doing. Go for it.
It's a new coach theory, really. When you get to points, you'll have somebody who actually people will listen to that first week because there's a chip on the shoulder, especially when you do something like that this early in the season and get a lot of attention.
Yeah, but at the same time, and this is the ironic part, and this is the final part of my piece. I praised about the Jets defense efforts being wasted, and they're getting lit up tonight. I mean, and they made a couple of really fair. Yeah, they made a couple of pretty bad penalties. They got bailed out because the Bills made off as a pass interference that kind of killed their own drive. But I mean, this is definitely a panic fire. I didn't think Robert Saleh was going to be was the right fit for this team anyway, because there was a number. And to his defense, a number of things happened that was beyond his control. He inherited Zach Wilson. That was not his quarterback pick.
Nope.
He built a defense from the ground up, one of the best defenses in the league. No quarterback to speak of, and the front office didn't do him any favors to speak of. They bring in Aaron Rodgers. He gets hurt 4 plays into the season. The Jets still finished 7-10, meaning that they lost 2 games, particularly against the defending champion Chiefs on Sunday Night Football on a questionable penalty that probably would have helped them get to the playoffs. They lost a number of close games last year. So there's a number of things that happened on Robert Saleh's watch beyond his control that I thought he should have been able to be given a full season to see how things play out. The firing doesn't surprise me. The timing of it, I think, is the thing that catches everyone by surprise.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I think, in my opinion, and I've said this on another podcast, so I can say this perfectly. I even said this on another podcast the day before he got fired that I thought he should have been fired because he never should have been coaching this team to begin the season in the first place. You don't need a strong guy to deal with Aaron Rodgers. And once you have Aaron Rodgers, by the way, in your organization, you've made a deal with the devil.
Yep.
Not necessarily a great deal with the devil, not necessarily a devil in there, but you're going to bend to him in certain ways. Now, this firing seems to be more of a Woody Johnson move than it does seem to be
Yep.
an Aaron Rodgers move, which is on brand for, I'm sorry, this firing seems to be an Ambassador Johnson move more than it seems to be other, like most Ambassador Johnson moves. I'm sorry, Woody, don't find me. I forgot to address you as Ambassador. I apologize. I won't let that happen again. But overall, I do think Robert Saleh just didn't really have control of this team to begin with. And I think that the right time to fire him was at the end of last year, just because his record just did not prove to him having to even have a chance with Aaron Rodgers out there. I think, and from the word go, just not even just what happened in that whole Egypt scenario. We don't know if he was being told this beforehand, but Salah essentially threw Rodgers under the bus, and a lot of stars usually miss mandatory minicamp because mandatory is not mandatory if you are a paid star, apparently, and it just really became more of a situation that it really shouldn't have. And I
Mm-hmm.
think overall, this is just a guy who we've always said this before on this show. People are built to be defensive coordinators sometimes, never are built to go that second level. And I think Robert Saleh is going to be a very good defensive coordinator for another team next year, but he's not really going to be a head coaching guy anytime soon. Maybe he'll go back to college if he has that head coaching itch and goes to a smaller Big Four conference school. But for right now, this was the wrong fit for him. This was the wrong fit for a first time head coach, especially what you inherited, what came to you,
Mm-hmm.
and what you were not really able to do with. I know you didn't have Aaron Rodgers last year, but you still had one of the league's best defenses. And I feel like there were just times, especially this season, when you had Rodgers back, where that potential for this team was not maximized. And whatever happens with Jeff Ulbrich and whatever happens in the near future is going to be built on a team that'll have, I think, a little more leadership than what Salah has done because I think there was a very low ceiling for Robert Saleh and a very low floor as well. So I think this was the right move. Obviously, the timing of it was terrible. You don't want to get go of anybody after week 5 of the season, but considering the fact that Aaron Rodgers is now is now 40 and not getting any older, and you have 1 year plus of him probably at any function left,
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to get your wins whenever you can get them. All right, guys, let's move on. All right, so we're going to talk about the local baseball ball clubs and their journey to a possible second ever Subway Series. The New York Yankees, well, this is attempt number 6 for them in
Mm-hmm.
the ALCS to make a World Series for the first time since 2009. But for the first time in seemingly an eternity, their opponent in their way is not from Houston. It's from actually the team that they faced the most times in this DS era, the Cleveland Guardians. The Guardians and the Yankees have met in the DS era now 6 separate times. This is actually number 7. But they haven't met for a pennant since 1998. That's the only time that they actually have. And a guy by the name of Knobloch was at the crosshairs in the Bronx. Jay, we don't want to remember those moments. It was one of the most panicful times, I think, ever in the city's history. They won the series in 6, but it was still panic. It was almost like DEFCON 5. But after what is 3 outs away from being a comfortable game 1 victory, the Yankees are going to try to look to take more games like the 5-2 game, seemingly, given anything else. And that win tonight and look to get 3 more of those wins on the way to the Fall Classic. Let's talk about a Yankee hitter who needs to step up. And that's going to start with you, Jay. And a man with a home run postseason rate going into this series comparable to Babe Ruth should qualify.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the Yankee hitter. I mean, look, we all know that the
Who needs
Yankees.
to keep up his hot bat, by the way.
Exactly. And that's Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, look, we all know that the Yankees' chances of completing the chase for 28 will require Aaron Judge to start hitting like his MVP self and change his history of coming up short in October. But having Giancarlo Stanton holding down the fort until that happens helps. And it's something that the Yankees' offense will need to have continue in the ALCS. Now, Stanton struggled down the stretch of the regular season, just 9 homers and a 738 OPS in the second half of the season, after 18 homers and a 795 OPS in the first half. he's been the epitome of a streaky hitter since coming to the Bronx. But overall, he rebounded from a career worst 86 weighted runs created last season to 116 rated runs created plus this season. And despite flying somewhat under the radar this season with all the comparisons to Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig that Judge and Juan Soto were getting, we've been reminded that the Yankee DH, who was arguably the third best Bronx Bomber this season, has historically stepped up his game once the calendar turns to October, and this October is no different. In 6 postseasons with the Yankees, including the ALDS win over KC, where the case could be made that he's why the Yankees advanced, he went 6 for 16. That's .375 batting average with a .444 on base, .688 slugging. That's a 1.132 OPS, a homer, 4 RBIs. Stanton in 31 games across 128 plate appearances and 112 at-bats in these 6 postseasons with the Yankees. 277, 344, 643 slash line, 987 OPS, 12 home runs, 28 RBI, 17 runs scored. His ratio of 1 home run every 9.33 at-bats is 4th all-time in Yankee history, as is that 987 OPS. The 3 Yankees ahead of him on both lists might be familiar to you: Ruth, Gehrig, and Mr. October himself, Reginald Martinez Jackson. Now, Stanton started the ALDS slowly, going 1 for his first 8 in games 1 and 2, but finished strong, going 5 for 8 in games 3 and 4 with that tie-breaking homer in the 8th inning of game 3, and all 3 of his extra base hits, and 3 of his 4 RBIs, including the insurance run, it gave the Yankees breathing room in this series clincher. Yes, he'll strike out at a 30% clip, but when he's locked in like he was for the last 2 games in Kansas City, the way the ball comes off his bat is the very definition of a seat-seeking missile. As Grant Brisbee of The Athletic wrote, quote, Stanton is a 1 of 18 with 10 Ks away from being an all-time Yankees dud in the court of public opinion, to be sure. But with another good series and some well-timed dingers, he could be the face of the whole postseason. It's what the Yankees have been waiting for this whole time. I concur with that assessment. Now, Stanton, like Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, when they're doing their best Ruth and Gehrig impersonation, has the ability to carry the Yankee offense, as he showed in the 2020 postseason, where he put up a 1.45 OPS with 6 homers, including a stretch where he went yard in 5 straight games. That's the second longest streak in postseason history, along with 13 RBI and 7 runs scored. He struggled against Cleveland in the regular season in 5 games across 22 plate appearances and 19 at-bats, just a 211, 318, 368 slash line with a 687 OPS, 1 homer, 4 RBI, 1 run scored. But if he can keep hitting like he did against Kansas City, it'll go a long way to getting New York to the World Series, though ideally Judge and Soto find their bats so Big G doesn't have to carry the load alone. Now, tonight, in Game 1 against the Guardians, Soto got his first postseason home run as a Yankee for the first run of a 3-run third inning. Judge got his first postseason RBI on a sac fly in the 4th, as the top 2 Bronx Bombers finally contributed in the same game. Stanton, on the other hand, started slowly, 0 for 2 with a walk and a run scored on a wild pitch, didn't drive in any of the 4 men who were on base in his first 3 plate appearances, and then he came up with 2 outs and no one on in the bottom of the 7th and absolutely crushed an 0-1 four-seam fastball 439 feet into the center field seats. It was, as John Sterling would have called it, a Stantonian blast, the very definition of a seat-seeking missile to put the Yankees up 5-1, and they're hoping that Luke Weaver will close it out and give them a 1-0 lead in the series. Not a bad way for Stanton to start, but if we know anything about his history in October, it's not a surprise either.
That 2020 postseason definitely shows exactly what he can do in that ALCS against Tampa Bay. He was just outstanding. Anthony, Yankees have a lot of pitchers who need to step up, especially after the Kansas City series. So give me one of them who needs to step up as we go forward with this ALCS.
Yeah, before I continue, though, I want to say to all the haters out there, because they complain about us being a New York show, who's in the Bronx right now watching the Yankees and Guardians game? Tell us what, baby.
We don't care about it, especially because she is rooting for Cleveland, because Travis Kelce is a big Cleveland Guardian fan. So
but that's true. But one of her number 1 songs is "Welcome to New York." So
that doesn't mean anything.
She's in New York, and the haters are not. Anyway,
All right, continue.
anyway, my pitcher to step up is a guy who actually did step up in his last time. That is the one and only Garrett Cole, who will be pitching Game 2 tomorrow night in ALCS. Now you go back to going into Game 1 of the division series in Kansas City. He ended the regular season just allowed one run over his last 15 and two-thirds innings, but he looked incredibly shaky from the word go. I mean, there was he gave up a lot of hard hit contact balls to a Kansas City Royals team that scored all of three runs in 18 innings in their wild card series win over Baltimore. But but when you watch that game, it was a lot of the contact was one thing, the long outs is another. He gave up four runs across 5 innings. Did not look sharp. And the Royals, batters attacked him early. He had a hard time locating the slider, which was pretty noticeable. And the Royals batters definitely made him pay for it. Now, fast forward to Game 2, and Garrett Cole made the adjustments. And looked more like the Garrett Cole that was the Cy Young Award winner last year when he finished 15-4 with an ERA under 3, and less like the 8-5 Garrett Cole this year that may have showed up in Game 1 that was coming off the elbow issues that cost him half a season. This year, he went again. He struck out four strikeouts, but a lot of hard hit balls or grounders, a lot of weak contact as well. One adjustment that Garrett Cole pointed out that he made was he pretty much dropped the slider altogether. In Game 1, he threw 11 of those sliders and they were hit hard. He pretty much relied more on his fastball and his changeup. 55% of his pitches in Game 2 were for the fastball. In fact, his last pitch, a fastball was a flyout, was at 97 miles per hour. He went another solid start in Game 4. And this is the Garrett Cole, I think, I pointed this in our group chat. This is the Garrett Cole that the Yankees need because obviously Carlos Rodon tonight got the Yankees off to a good start, a 1-0 lead. You gotta feel great if the Garrett Cole of Game 4 shows up tomorrow night. And it definitely helps if that knife and wind that showed up in tonight's game comes into Game 2. Garrett Cole is notoriously a fly ball pitcher. Clearly, windy conditions, and you guys been in Yankee Stadium late in the season to know this more than I do. Windy conditions in that stadium definitely helps a fly ball pitcher like Garrett Cole. But that's the guy who used to show up for the duration of this postseason if the Yankees want to get back to the World Series and add number 28 as far as championships. Mm-hmm. This is the Cole that they signed up for to get the Cy Young Award winner, the ace that's going to take them. That's gonna set to set the bar for the rest of the Yankees hitters. Carlos Rodon even said before his start tonight that he was watching Garrett Cole's Game 4 start last Thursday very closely, and you saw how he attacked the hitters. He went right after them. He didn't play around with the strike zone. He put the ball in play, and I think and he trusts his defense. But more importantly, he went after a Guardians lineup that is very patient. I mean, we saw what they did to Terrence Screwball in Game 5 over the weekend, a guy who looked virtually unhittable all season until they finally got to him. So Garrett Cole, Garrett Cole Game 4 shows up tomorrow. I like the Yankees' chances of ending this series before this weekend. But if you go up 2-0 and you gotta win. Hey, this is what the ALCS is all about. You have to protect home field. If the Yankees get 2, going back to Cleveland, you realize you only need 1 to really maintain your home field advantage. So you play the laws of average still. But also,
you need none technically. You need none technically to. You don't need any to technically maintain your home field advantage. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Well, what's more comfortable, coming back home up 3-2 or down 3-2? That's not saying 1. Yeah, but Garrett Cole is the guy that really doesn't really need to step it up as much as just need to continue on the trend he set in Game 4 last Thursday evening.
And I think one thing, just to go back to something that has been surprising to me with the Yankees in postseason, although they were the leaders of the regular season, their walk percentage has been incredible so far in these first 5 games. 30 plus walks And they don't. You don't need to hit with runners in scoring position when you are getting runs via walks or wild pitches, like they just did tonight for a lot of their runs. Since, by the way, they are up 1-0 now officially in the series against the Cleveland Guardians. The Guardians are going to need to come back, and to do that, they're going to need two big players. So I'll start with Stephen Kwan. Hitting wise, he is the sixth player in MLB history to hit 520 as a qualifying number for qualified batters in a DS at 11 hits versus the Tigers in their 5-game series, 3 for 5 with 3 singles and 2 runs in the closer. He started his career going over in the playoffs. This is his second playoffs. He was over in the series, wildcard series against Tampa Bay. In the series, again, 524 with 11 hits and 21 at-bats. He has a 10-game hitting streak, which is the longest in Cleveland history since Kenny Lofton. I believe that streak was broken tonight, but I'll go check that out really quickly. But Stephen Kwan is a guy who just this year was hitting in June almost 400. He is a guy who has improved his hitting. He ended up going down all the way to like 292 by the end of the season, but he is a guy who is kind of improving. He did hit today, so he is now on 11-game hitting streak, by the way. But he is a guy who is improving at the plate. He did have to miss 40 games this year due to injury. But you saw a lot of the May and June, April through June Kwan in the series previous than what you saw at the end of the season. If he gets it going in the beginning of the lineup, that allows everybody to stay patient, allows to get into long counts, allows to get, especially when we get into Cleveland and you get the Clark Schmidt and Luis Gil starts at games 3 and 4, and allow the possibility of bringing out that bullpen a lot earlier, because even though the Yankees bullpen has been lights out so far these first 5 games of the series, they haven't had to do as much, especially in the last 2-3 games. You want to get the starting pitcher out of the game earlier, and I think to do that, you need patient hitting at the top of the lineup. As for the pitcher, Emmanuel Clase has been the best closer in baseball for about 3 years running now. He had some trouble in the Tigers series. Obviously, he gave up the big home run in game 2 to basically give the Tigers the victory. And then he also gave up another run in game 4. But then, as he came out to Wild Thing, not always his song, by the way, in Cleveland lore, obviously, it means a big thing. He came and he basically got 6 outs like it was nothing to finish off the Tigers in the ALCS. Usually, there is a reliever in the postseason that has a big cutter and takes out pitchers. But it used to be that the Yankees had that pitcher in Mariano Rivera. Now it's Emmanuel Clase who has the cutter that is pretty much devastating to all hitters out there. Clase has been touchable this postseason, and I think in closer games where you see Clase come out there, it's going to be interesting to see if the Yankees, who have been, again, a very patient team at bat, one of the most patient teams out there. In fact, they've been getting more opportunities to be patient. Anthony, you just texted me tonight. Anytime the Yankees see anything that is anywhere almost outside of the strike zone, they don't swing. The only person who I think swings at everything is Giancarlo Stanton, but as we've discussed, there's a reason for that. So I think that's going to be the key, just to kind of keep it going. And if they see Emmanuel Clase, then they are going to have to get to Emmanuel Clase. The one thing about Cleveland is they don't have a lot of starting pitching. Shane Bieber is their best pitcher, and he basically only made 2 starts this year. Alex Cobb, who got a shorter leash, and I think he probably should have tonight, only pitched 2 1/3 innings, and he's only made 4 or 5 starts this whole entire year. So Cleveland really deals with matchups, and the one matchup nightmare is Emmanuel Clase. So we'll see what happens as that series goes on.
Yep.
All right. Going to the NLCS as the New York Mets and Los Angeles Dodgers are meeting in there. And despite the Mets having the highest payroll in baseball in their upsets over the Brewers and Phillies, they played like scrappy underdogs. Who knew with a $310 million payroll, you can play like scrappy underdogs. And now the Mets are in their 8th NLCS of all time. On the other side are the perennial proverbial kings of the NL and the Los Angeles Dodgers, who just won a series in front of fans at home for the first time in 11 years. So Mets also just did it for the first time in nines, for the first time in a long time, actually. I think it was more than nine. I think it was 2000 the last time that they won it from the fans. Never done it in Citi Field. So now the Dodgers are hoping this meeting with the Metropolitans goes the way of their first playoff meeting, that LCS win in 1988, and not the fate of their other two meetings, and that's LDS wins in 2006 and 2015 by Los Mets. The first two games, both, unless you're Anthony, were not nail biters. 9-0 Dodgers in game one, as the Dodgers became the first team to get back-to-back-to-back shutouts in the second season in 57 years when it happened to them by the Baltimore Orioles. Game two went to the Masters of the Playoff Pumpkin as the Mets won in a 5-run second inning, winning that game 7-3. With all of that being said, we have the same simple questions in this segment. Jay, what hitter needs to stay hot for the Mets?
I mean, look, this is a tough decision, as Pete Alonso was also an option here. But when a young player like Mark Vientos, whose previous track record gave no indication that he could do this, goes on a hot streak like this at this time of year, he bears watching as the Mets try and keep this magical fall season going. I'm thinking that unless you've been following the Mets this season, you might not know who this kid is. So let me lay some background on you. Vientos was a second-round pick out of high school way back in 2017, just 17 in his first professional season. He hit, showing potential as a power hitter at every stop along the way. 275, 357, 447 slash line, 804 OPS, 15 homers, 78 RBI, and 111 games over 2 years in rookie ball. 255, 300, 411 slash line, 711 OPS, 12 homers, 62 RBI, and 111 games in his one season at regular A ball. 281, 346, 580 slash line, 927 OPS, 22 homers, 59 RBI in 72 games at Double A. But despite putting up a 289, 372, 547 slash line, it's a 919 OPS with 49 homers and 156 RBI across 4 seasons and 204 games at the AAA level, his inability to bring his bat with him when called up to Queens, 205, 256, 354 slash line, 610 OPS, 10 homer, 25 RBI, and a 30% strikeout rate over 81 games across the 22 and 23 seasons, had the organization wondering if he topped out as one of those dreaded 4A hitters. But after Brett Beatty struggled again to start the season, the Mets gave Vientos one more shot to claim the everyday third base job after starting his 4th AAA season with a 285, 376, 500 slash line, an 876 OPS, 6 homers, and 30 RBI in 31 games. And this time he seized the opportunity and did not let it go. In 111 games at the big league level across 454 plate appearances, 413 at bats, he put up a 266, 322, 516 slash line, an 837 OPS, 27 home runs, and 71 RBI. But I doubt even our resident Met fans saw this coming. 563, 611, 1063 slash line. That is a 1674 OPS with multiple hits in every game, including 2 doubles, 2 homers, and 5 RBI in the NLDS, especially after a wild card series where he was just a measly 3 of 12. 250, 250, 250 slash line, 500 OPS, no extra base hits, just 2 RBI. So far this October, Vientos is leading all players in win probability at him. His bat is the big reason why, but he's also flashed some leather, highlighted by a play in Game 3 of the NLDS against the Phillies, where his momentum carried him into foul territory after snagging a grounder, but still managed to throw out Alec Boehm at first base. It was a play that, dare we say it, and I do, reminiscent of Brooks Robinson's play on Lee May in the 1970 World Series. Google it, kids. Robinson put on a glove work clinic in that series. That's why that play stood out to me. Vientos' hot bat has added some length to a Mets lineup, led by Francisco Lindor. He had the 906 OPS in the NLDS with that Game 4 grand slam, Brandon Nimmo, 4 for 14 with a homer in the DS, who's playing with plantar fasciitis, and it's glaringly obvious that he is not 100% running around in the outfield. And Pete Alonso, who had 2 homers in the DS, and they'll need that depth to win at the NLCS level. The Dodgers came into the NLDS against the Padres with a suspect pitching staff, and yet somehow managed to hold San Diego scoreless for the final 24 innings of that series, 16 of those innings coming from their pen. In total, LA's bullpen threw 25 and 2/3 innings against the scoreless innings against the Padres. 25 and 2/3 innings against the Padres, allowing just 6 earned runs, all of which came in the final 2 innings of Game 2. That's a 2.14 earned run average, y'all. But the Mets have shown the ability to beat up on bullpens much better than the one LA brought into October. They'll need to keep that going if they're going to continue this postseason run. And if Mark Vientos can bring his NLDS bat with him, they'll have a good chance to do so. Did not get off to a great start in Game 1 of the NLCS. 0 for 4, 3 Ks, left 3 men on base. But the entire Mets offense was MIA. 3 hits, all singles, none from Lindor, Nimmo, or Alonso, not to mention Vientos. 6 base runners in total as the Dodgers completely shut down the Mets lineup, extending that consecutive scoreless streak, as the rabbi mentioned at the top, to 33. Just for a little clarification on that MLB record that they tied, that 1966 run by the Orioles against the Dodgers was the final 3 games of a 4-game World Series sweep. So it doesn't happen on any bigger stage. Game 2 this afternoon, much better performance for the Mets third baseman. Vientos put up a multi-hit game for the 5th time in his last 6 postseason games. 2 for 5 with a grand slam after a 9-pitch at bat after Lindor was intentionally walked to load the bases in the 2nd. You think he took that personally, Anthony? Followed by a single in the 4th, accounting for 4 of New York's 7 runs as the Mets ended the Dodgers scoreless streak in the top of the 1st and took advantage of a much worse performance at the start of the game from a Dodgers pitching staff that was deliberately throwing a bullpen game, and they held on to even the series with a 7-3 win. Vientos keeps this up. The Mets' chances of being the National League entry in the World Series go up exponentially. Anthony, like you, I want another Subway Series. Bring it on.
Yeah. By the way, Jay, and I have to ask you this. I saw this, and I wanted to just verify this. Is Mark Vientos really the youngest player in League Championship Series history to hit a grand slam at 24 years of age?
Yes, he is.
Okay, I saw that graphic, and I didn't know if I was just having seeing things or just maybe a flash across the screen. Nope. But I wanted to verify that was true or not.
It was
verified.
Thank you for the verification. By the way, Vientos literally said in his post-game interview with Fox, he did take it personally after. And by the way, I thought it was the wrong decision to do that.
There you go.
But, there you go. Anthony, you're positive, Patty, when it comes to this. So, which bullpen reliever are you going to say needs to step it up for the Mets?
Just one moment, please.
Oh, God. Jesus Christ.
Okay. Well, as the saying goes, life is like a Edward Diaz appearance. Edward Diaz appearance. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, touche.
Yeah, well, he is the guy that has to step it up, and there's plenty of reasons because he's not second to Edward Diaz that was coming out to the flair and the flamboyance of 2 years ago. It was pretty much baseball's most dominant closer, and obviously a DH who would do and a year off would do that to you. But this postseason, he's giving Mets fans a roller coaster that nobody else signed up for. I mean, you don't know what Edward Diaz is going to show up. Is it going to be the dominant Edward Diaz that we saw at the end of Game 4, after he walked a couple of hitters, basically pulled out his most dominant stuff and blowing fastball after fastball, blowing a fastball past Cody Clemens and eventually blowing a fastball past Kyle Schwarber to wrap up that series. Is it the Edward Diaz that cough up a save in Game 2 and gives up 2 walks and allows 3 runs? Is it the Edward Diaz that completely fell apart in the final regular season game, doubleheader against Atlanta, blows a 3-run lead, and they manages to get the win anyway. The very next inning when he's able to get a ground out to end the game. Is it the Edward Diaz that locked down game 2? Even though he floated with danger. Here's the thing, and even Edward Diaz is playing this out when his teammates huddled around him at the end of game 4. They were telling him and basically urging him to just blow the fastball by him. And I even watched the game 2 this afternoon when he was on the mound. Hitters really have a hard time trying to catch it to his fastball. It's when he can't locate the fastball, and then he has no confidence in the slider, where he is running into a lot of trouble. And I date back to earlier this year when he blew a 3-run lead against Arizona. And gave up a game-winning home run in that game to blow a save. Edward Diaz, when he is at his most dominant, is what you saw earlier this afternoon, blowing fastball 97, 98 mile per hour in the strike zone, making guys swing and miss. And when they make contact, it's late. They're fouling it off. They're making very little to no contact at all. The Edward Diaz that we also see at the beginning of those innings, a guy who is not confident in the slider, who's not locating the fastball. This is the ups and downs of Edward Diaz that has been with the Mets since he signed with the team in 2019. He had a couple of decent seasons. He had the All-Star season 2 years ago where he was virtually unhittable. And then this season, he still had the tweet saying that there was always that little bit of, good Lord, can we just have a 1-2-3 inning for peace sake? It's the entire Met bullpen.
You asked too much, Anthony. You asked too much.
And it's the funny part is the Mets bullpen is probably the underbelly to what has turned out to be a solid Mets team as far as hitting, surprisingly good side pitching. The bullpen has been a very bit of a question mark. It's been like that the whole season. Remember back to the All-Star break show, we talked about the Mets bullpen having the highest ERA at the time and still being kind of a mixed bash of results. I want to go back to 2019 with the Washington Nationals to see our postseason team go on a run, despite the fact that the bullpen is almost liable to give away a game just as much as
great comparison.
Yeah, just as much as they are liable to save a game. And Edward Diaz is the guy you thought you would feel comfortable with getting 3 and even 4 out save. But when he's walking and putting guys on base and he's not locating, is when Met fans start to kind of grab themselves like, oh God, here we go again.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, the days I joked about how I always envy Yankee fans. Because you knew with Mariano Rivera, if the game is getting to the 8th inning and you're down, game's over. Just forget it. With Edward Diaz, you don't know if the game is over or the game is just beginning. Have you seen in Atlanta 2 weeks ago?
It's a little scary.
And he's a guy that's going to have to look. Even if Francisco Alvarez have to run to the pitcher's mound on a visit and strangle him to encourage him to drop the slider and just start fastballs the rest of the way. He's going to have to.
And this is why he's in the lineup, by the way, because of his ability to strangle the pitcher to make sure he gets better pitches going.
Yeah, because he obviously hasn't been doing it with his hitting, but his compare at the pitching staff is why Francisco Alvarez is the everyday catcher. And Edward Diaz, look, if he want to make Mets fans feel a little more comfortable, he's gonna attack the hitter. That's been his number one thing. Even to his own admission, he's been trying to be too fine, too perfect with some of his pitches. It's like, dude, you're throwing high heat. You should be come at guys and tell them, here's my best pitch. I dare you to hit it. Every time you step, you're the closer for peace sake. That's literally what closers do. You come in, you blow guys away, and tell them, see you later. Go hit the showers.
I think there's a few things. Number one, I do think, like I said, it's a little bit of a F around and find out situation because I think he plays a lot with his off speed stuff a little too much, as I said, and then when he turns it on, you're right. He gets out quickly. But his ability to do that still puts him in like the upper echelon of closers in the league. I think one of the bigger problems is there's no real setup right now for him. Stanek might be the best choice out of everybody, but it's still kind of a crapshoot. And I think going forward, if you have that kind of rotation or that kind of lead up to him closing out the games, you're going to kind of get a situation kind of like 2015 Juris Familia, who ended up blowing probably the biggest game of the season in game one of the World Series. So it could be a Familia situation, or it could be just an Armando Benitez situation. And they're really good closers, but eventually, when the button gets hit, it kind of explodes. And I think Yankee fans, Jay, I almost can compare it to Clay Holmes this year.
Yeah.
He was on the teetering, and then it turned out that maybe he's better not actually closing. And it turned out that they made the move.
He's been much better since he was removed from the closer role. The fact that he's become the seventh inning guy, Canely has settled in nicely into the eighth, and Weaver has just been lights out. And the fact that you can kind of deploy him in a Mariano Rivera kind of way where you're not white knuckling if you have to ask him to get a 4 or 5 out save because he's been lengthened out from having been a multi guy before taking on the closer role. I think the way that they have it set up now, Holmes in the seventh, Canely in the eighth, and Weaver in the ninth, you have a bullpen that has set roles, and that is such a huge advantage to a team, especially in a postseason where runs are usually at a premium. You need to be able to lock down the last third of the game. And Anthony, as we saw today, because the Mets are mixing and matching, and Mendoza is hoping he's got the right guy on the right day against the right guy in the batter's box at that particular moment in time, it definitely gives a sense of uncertainty through the final three innings of the game.
And I think we also said it perfectly too. I think during the road trip that they had in August coming back, there was a point where starters didn't lose a game for this team for over a month. All of their games were bullpen losses. So that just kind of shows.
The Mets have been very fortunate with the abundance of starting pitching they got in. I mean, Sean Manaea was great today. They back to even the wild card series. I mean, Severino got out to a shaky start but pitched well. Jose Quintana pitched very well for the Mets too, and David Peterson, outside of a couple of moments, have been really a really good bridge gap to that bullpen. It's been the middle. It's been when you finally got to the bullpen. And eventually trying to find a way to get to Edwin Diaz if you can avoid getting to him too soon. That has been kind of the bugaboo for Carlos Mendoza all season long because Stanek has been the most consistent, but even he's had his moments. And Phil Maton today got let down by a couple of bad breaks on the defensive side. But
they get over it though, so that's a good sign.
So
we'll see what happens going forward with this team. So let's talk about the enemy, the opponent, real quickly. And the Dodgers, of course, have one of the more fearful lineups that I've seen out there in quite some time. Even just looking at that game 5 that they had against the Padres, anybody named Hernandez can just hit a home run and just win the game. Kiki Hernandez and Teoscar Hernandez. Kiki, one of the best postseason players of all time, seemingly, especially for the Dodgers. And Teoscar, we know what he's done this year. He is a menace at the plate. Otherwise, though, there is this guy named Ohtani, who also is in that lineup, who I will talk about right now. He can. Ironically enough, he's only been batting .222 this postseason, was 0-for-3 today, had a decent series against the Padres. There were 2 hitless games out there, did not get a hit in game 5, 0-for-4. Did not get a hit in game 2, 0-for-4. Did start his postseason career basically with a home run in game 1 of the NLCS. Listen, Shohei Ohtani is going to be a guy who I think, like Aaron Judge for the Yankees, hate to always bring the Yankees back in. This is a Mets segment that we're talking about over here, but is going to be a guy who you're going to have to assume is going to eventually get hot, and you're going to have to find a way to stop it. I think one thing I've noticed about Ohtani is he seems to do better when there's men on base than when there's nobody on. It's actually really good. I think he was like 6 for 8 going into today with men on base, and he was not that good with runners on. I think like 2 hits. But and also, ironically enough, wanted to mention this fact: the Mets caught him stealing yesterday. It was the first time in 37 tries that Ohtani got caught stealing. I guess you kind of lose your edge when you're up big in a LCS game. But once you get him on the bases, you can almost assume he's going to score if there's less than 2 outs. Ohtani is a student of the game, as we've said before many times, modern Babe Ruth when it comes to hitting, and eventually possibly not modern Babe Ruth when it comes to pitching when he's ready to go. Don't think he will not be pitching again this season. There were little teases of that in September, but I think that's kind of shied away, although it could always be in for a surprise. But Shohei Ohtani has not performed amazingly great this postseason. I think this has been more of a team effort for the Dodgers getting themselves to where they are right now. But we'll see what happens when we go to New York. If Ohtani can kind of step up in a place where you're going to need some precise hitting, because wins at Yankee Stadium will keep the ball in. Wins at Citi Field will 100% keep the ball in, and that'll be very interesting to see. For the pitching, what can you say about Jack Flaherty? Did not have a great season post trade from Detroit to LA. Imagine if that Detroit lineup still had him and Tarek Skubal at their best. Oh boy, that would have been a little dangerous. But last night the guy who actually, the first postseason game he saw was Game 5 of the 2015 NLDS, where Jacob deGrom and Clayton Kurt and Zach Greinke pitched one of the more masterful DS games that we've seen. He had 7 shutout innings yesterday, limited the Mets to 2 hits, which were just in the 5th inning, and they were successive singles. Some interesting stats from that game. He was the first pitcher to go that long into a game pretty much in over a month for the Dodgers. I think it was September 8th was the last time they had someone go into the 7th. And furthermore, he is the first to go into the 7th for the Dodgers in the postseason since their last really successful postseason series back in 2021 against the Giants. So Flaherty is going to be the best pitcher. I'm interested to see what Yamamoto does when they go to Citi Field for Game 3. But the fact that you have Flaherty in your back pocket for Game 5 on Friday, kind of comforting, just to see the fact that, as I said before, as I've said a couple of times, they're not going to win on bullpen games alone. You're not going to get 2-hit shutout games from a bullpen game. And luckily for the Dodgers, they have somebody who can get themselves out very quickly. So we'll see what happens going forward for the Dodgers in this NLCS. Been a very fun series, by the way. It's very good to see these two fan bases kind of get excited. I know Dodger Stadium can get loud, especially in days when they don't have to go to work afterwards. So it's always fun to see the Dodgers and Mets play.
By the way, can we get a shout out to the Dodgers organist? I mean,
yes,
these 2 games, I'm not gonna lie, I have absolutely loved hearing the organ player at Dodger Stadium. They played basically the soundtrack to a Goofy movie during the 5th inning of today's game, and then there was a game earlier this season. They played the theme song to Sailor Moon. Like, to me, as an anime fan, that warms my heart. Okay. By the way, I've been to Dodger Stadium. I've never been to a game, but I know the traffic is brutal in LA. So, social media, lay off the people trying to leave the game early. You have not drove in LA traffic.
Has nothing to do with leaving the game early. It has
LA
to
traffic
do with
is a nightmare. Yeah, LA traffic is a nightmare. Okay, I
then don't go to the game. Well, then don't go to the game at all. You think people in the Bronx are really happy to go to a 7:30 night game when they have to work the next day?
We have the subway. They don't. We have the subway. They don't.
Still 2 hours if you're a Long Islander in New York are getting out there, but that's neither here nor there. Let's move on. Let's head over to the National Football League. He said in his best Chris Berman voice. The New York Giants are the epitome of 1 step forward and 4 steps back. Sunday was the 4 steps back part of the equation, as the 17 points that they held the Bengals to were not enough. And to be fair, it's 10 with a garbage time touchdown. But the Giants could only muster a TD for the game. 1 TD. Their first TD at home this year. Yay! 3 games at home. 3 games at home. 3 games at home. 1 tutty. Not great. 17-7 final. The 2-4 G-men now see an old friend in RB1 for years. That's little guy by the name of Saquon Barkley. And the 3-2 Eagles, who had a closer shave than Nick Sirianni's new haircut, winning 17-13 against the Browns this past Sunday. Here we go again. Another Giants-Eagles game, but let's talk about the past. Jay, positive from that game that needs to step up, pretty obvious.
Yeah, performance of the Giants defense. This is hands down the best game Shane Bowen's unit has turned in this season. It was enough for a win, but it was undone by a Giants offense that had 3 second half drives of at least 10 plays in 5 minutes of possession time, but could only turn the first one into 7 points. The other 2 resulted in a missed 47-yard field goal, first of 2 missed second half field goals by Greg Joseph, and a turnover on downs. The second time a Giants drive ended that way in the second half. First on the opening drive of the third quarter, as the Giants failed to convert a 4th and 2 at their own 38, a call I'm still scratching my head over. I completely disagreed with Brian Dable's call there. Though the defense did bail him out, Bobby Okereke forced a fumble that Micah McFadden recovered to snuff out a Bengals drive that surely...
I was wondering what you would have thought, considering the fact that they went for it so many times on 4th down last night. It was so un-Giants-like.
So that first half performance by the Giants defense was as dominant as I've seen them play in the Daboll era. Check out these numbers. 7 points allowed, all in the Bengals opening drive of the game. 149 yards total. 47 of them on one play, Burrow's touchdown run on Cincinnati's opening drive. 70 yards passing, holding Burrow to 9 of 15, 60% completion for just 87 yards. That's 5.8 yards per attempt. No touchdowns, no picks, and only a 76.2 passer rating. They allowed 79 yards rushing, with 47 of them on that Burrow touchdown run. Outside of Burrow's 2 carries for 57 yards, they had 9 carries for 22 yards. That's 2.4 yards per carry. They had 3 sacks, 1 by Burns, 2 by by Ojulari for 17 lost yards. They had 5 tackles for losses, 2 from Burns, 2 from Ojulari, 1 from Newbin, 10 quarterback pressures. They held Cincinnati to 3 for 8 on third downs. Overall, they held Cincinnati to just 17 points. The Bengals came in averaging 28 points per game, 4th in the NFL. Held them to just 52 plays. They'd average 59.2 per game coming into this one. 305 yards of offense. They averaged 359 per game coming into this one. That was 9th in the NFL. They allowed the Bengals just 13 first downs. Bengals were previously averaging 21.6 first downs per game coming into that one. Held them to 4 of 11 on third down. That's a 36.4 conversion rate. Bengals were 4th in the NFL coming into that game, converting at a 47.5% clip. They allowed only 1 Bengals drive to reach the red zone and held them to a field goal. If they had recovered the fumble that McFadden forced on Chase Brown with a little over 2 minutes to go on what turned out to be the game-sealing drive by the Bengals, both safety Jason Pinnock and cornerback Cordell Flott had chances to get the ball before it went out of bounds. Maybe the outcome of the game changes in the Giants' favor. Instead, Brown went 30 yards straight up the gut on the next play for the touchdown that sealed the game for Cincinnati. But they held the Bengals running backs, Brown and Zach Moss, to just 66 yards on 16 carries, 4.1 per carry. 30 of those yards came on that touchdown run by Brown to salt the game away at the end of that 5-play, 64-yard drive. Giants just ran out of gas or fight at that point after being unable to corral that loose ball. They finished with 4 sacks. Dexter Lawrence got the 4th. 7 tackles for losses, 7 quarterback hits, 16 total quarterback pressures. They held the Bengals pair of all-star wide receivers, Jamar Chase, 5 catches, 72 yards. T. Higgins, 7 catches, 77 yards, to mostly low-impact plays and kept them out of the end zone. They held quarterback Joe Burrow to just 208 yards passing. He came in averaging 274. No passing touchdowns. He had an NFL-leading 12 coming into the game and an 89.6 passer rating for the game. It was 113.6 coming into the game, 2nd in the NFL. When you put that kind of a defensive performance and allow an offense as explosive as the Bengals to have just 5 plays of 20 yards or more, with only 2 of them the one at the very beginning and the one at the very end result in touchdowns, that's something positive to hang your hat on going forward. Unfortunately, this loss is a glaring example of what happens when your team is spectacular in one of the three areas of a football game, defense, but falls way short in the other two, offense and special teams. What the Giants defense did should have been enough to give them their first home win of the season. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, but didn't, as the saying goes.
Yeah, there's just a lot to like. By the way, a defense that was hurt. By the way, thank you for watching. A defense that was just like hurt in a lot of situations in that game. So it'll be very interesting to see going forward. Anthony, a negative that needs to be fixed going forward for the New York Giants heading into week number 7.
I would say this is too late to ask Al Bundy to come out of retirement and lead this offense. Okay.
Four touchdowns in one game. Just remember that. Yep. Very important.
That's 4 more than what Daniel Jones has scored in 3 games at home this season, but that's besides the point. Playing at full service for the Giants, they had 24, but here's the thing, 5 of 15 on 3rd down, 3 of 5 on 4th down. The Giants going for it so much in the last couple of home games. Reminds you of the guy you're playing John Madden football who goes for it on 4th and 35. Like, he never put the ball whatsoever. But Daniel Jones, look at his final stat numbers. He threw for over 200 yards. And when a lot of people have pointed out with Daniel Jones is his unwillingness to actually go through his progressions. He stills down that first option and never takes his eyes off of it to the point where the defensive backs know when the pass is coming. And on that 4th down, it was pretty obvious he's still down the receiver and turned into an incomplete pass. But also another thing too is look at the targets to receivers. Darius Slayton, 10 catches, 57 yards, was targeted 11 times. Clearly not enough possession there. Wan'Dale Robinson, 5 catches on 11 targets. None of it there. Then they got the running game going, but kind of late. Tyrone Tracy, 17 carries and 50 yards. Was able to get some tough yards early on, but for the most part, this running game has been a good part of this season so far. Bullshit non-assistant. And obviously, you think about the 2 missed field goals late in the second half for the Giants. They couldn't take advantage of a Bengals team that came into this week allowing close to over 34 points a game and over 417 yards per game to the opponents the last 3 games. They held the time of possession 24 minutes to 25. Had 1 first down, 24 to 13. Outgained the Cincinnati Bengals by 5, 309 and 304. 1 of 2 in the red zone, missed 2 field goals. And some of the play calling has got to be questionable. You wonder, Brian Daboll is the one who kind of put himself in the fire pan by taking over the play calling duties, but he hasn't exactly done a good job with some of the play calling as well. And you got to wonder, just what exactly do the Giants need to do to try to open things up with the offense? Because one offense touchdown at home this season, that's pathetic. I'm just gonna say it's what it is. It's very pathetic. Like you said, Jay, it wasted a very good defensive performance. Yep. Especially when you think about how good this Bengals offense is. Brian Burrows had a really a breakout game. They were missing Kevon Thibodeau as well. And the fact that they were able to keep the Bengals to 7 points for most of the game. And the only touchdown was a fluke play by Joe Burrow, who reminded everyone that he can actually run for it.
How about that?
Yeah, he actually reminded everyone, hey, I can run the ball too. It's one of those games where if you're a Giant fan, you look back at and say, once again, just like the Dallas game a few weeks back, this is a game that was winnable, and the Giants let get away because they couldn't get out of their own way. Their own futility became their bigger enemy than the opponent that they were lining up against.
It's also just a lot of just you mentioned the stagnant offense and just a lot of plays that Daniel Jones could have easily made yesterday. I've given him a lot of credit. I've given him credit where credit is due, but there were a lot of plays last night that These were drops, like they were the Dallas game. These were passes that he also missed on a certain number of plays, and you got to wonder what you want to get from that position. I mean, you'll get Malik Neighbors back either this week or next week, hopefully, but overall, you still need a balanced offense, and I think the running is still inconsistent. Again, Tyron Tracy is a rookie. You're not going to expect too much out of a fifth round draft pick yet. We'll see what happens when Singletary comes back, but the offense is just going to need to find some direction and need to find some direction quick. And if it doesn't happen quick, it's going to be under a new head coach next year. That's all I'm going to think. It shouldn't be, but I have a feeling it would be because Dayball, as the play caller, has taken even another step back from where they were in 2023. Let's move on to the player to watch. And you're living under a rock, or if you've been not watching any Hard Knocks this past year, or if you just want to never give up your Saquon Barkley 22 jersey, the answer to this question is Saquon Barkley. Didn't have a great game last week. Did have 20 touches, 18 receiving, 18 rushing, 2 receiving, only 54 all-purpose yards, which is by far the worst that he's had this year because all of his other games are over 100 all-purpose yards. 5 touchdowns, 4 rushing, 1 receiving. But just the games that he's had in the New Orleans and Tampa Bay games, and Tampa Bay game, obviously, they were out of it way out, but he had 8.6 yards per carry, 17 for 147, and then 8.4 yards per carry in that Tampa Bay game, 10 for 84. He's been used in almost every single way. I almost think he can get more targets than the 17 he's gotten this year, especially he could have gotten easily more targets in the games where A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith were playing. But now I think right now Saquon has just found a good fit with this Philly offense. I think they were trying to put a lot into just getting this offense back on track altogether, which is why he had the bad numbers that he had yesterday. But overall, revenge game. We know what he's done with the Giants in his career here. This is going to be a very interesting game, a very emotional game, I think, for Saquon. He's going to get booed, no doubt about it. I would have a feeling. By the way, 1,300 yards, by the way, in 2018, 1,003 in 19, 13, 12 in 2022. Just went for under 1,000 last year, but if you combine the 280 yards he had receiving, that's over 1,200 all-purpose yards. Going to see what happens for Saquon. I'm going to look to see him to get the ball early and often in this game. Probably one of the first games that he's really going to be the number one option. There's a lot of ways you can go with this Philadelphia team. It's just really a question of can Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, really find a way to make everything work out the right way in this game, which is going to be a very important game for both teams. Giants lose this game, they're probably not even coming close to seeing this division race, which is all of a sudden winnable for them this year. Remember, Dallas has struggled big time this year. Philly has kind of struggled too. They're only 3-2, and the Giants have some possible hopes here, but they have to win this game. If Philly doesn't win this game, then it's going to call into question what's going to happen with Nick Sirianni. There were calls to fire Sirianni yesterday, and Nick just clapped back at them at the end of the game, something he apologized for, by the way, today. When you do that in the 17-13 game against Cleveland, you probably shouldn't clap back. I think that's something that you should probably do as standard procedure 101. But I'm very interested to see what happens in this game in terms of offensive play calling for Kellen Moore and the Eagles and what the Giants can do to combat it. This is going to be the matchup that really decides the whole game. And I think don't assume that what they did against Cincinnati is going to transfer over because Philly has way too many weapons to not be a team that only gets 17 points against probably one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the league in Cleveland, otherwise as known as Jay's overall pick against in suicide pool every single week until he can't.
But I want to ask you this, Bye, and Jay, this goes to you too. What do you say about Jalen Hurts? Because really since halfway of last year, you can make the honest opinion that he might have regressed a little bit. I mean, some of his
Oh yeah.
decision making
There,
has
there,
been
there,
woeful at times.
yeah, there is something off. I don't know if it's the fact that Nick Sirianni, despite hiring Kellen Moore and giving him supposedly full control of the offense and the play calling, continues to stick his nose in, really admitting that like he called an occasional play during that game. I can tell you as a quarterback, I only want one voice, giving me play calls if they're coming in from the sidelines. I don't want them coming from two different places. For whatever it is, yeah, Anthony, I think Hurts has somewhat taken a step back. I don't know if he's just not comfortable with the change in offensive scheme under Moore, or if the fact that he hasn't had both of his receivers on the field at the same time for as long as stretches and complete games as he'd like.
Only two complete games counting yesterday.
Right, there you go. I don't know if it's because the addition of Barkley gives them a tier one running back that like you feel like you gotta feed the guy, a la the Ravens and Derrick Henry. This offense is not the same for a variety of reasons as it's been the last few years. I definitely think Jason Kelsey's retirement has been an underlying and an under the radar issue. The big reason is that he called the protections. That responsibility has fallen on Hurts. And I think because of it, Jalen may be thinking too much instead of playing as free as he used to when he didn't have that responsibility and only had to worry about where he needed to go with the ball on any given play. It's an adjustment, but they're fickle in Philly. And I'll tell you this, the one divisional game that like they will not accept losing in Philly is to the Giants. Yeah, losing to Dallas sucks. Losing to Washington sucks. But this is New York, Philly. And Ant, as a Met fan and the Phillies, you know you have been up front and front row seat to that New York Philly rivalry for years. It's the same in the NFL, and it goes back decades, all the way back, to Sam Huff, if you will. You want to go all the way back there. That's how deep this rivalry goes. The one game they do not want to lose in the division is to the Giants. And I'll tell you this, Rabbi, Saquon's coming into this game more hyped up than any game he has played. He has been looking forward to in recent memory. He wants to put his imprint on this game. And I'll tell you what, if the Eagles are smart, they'll make this as simple as possible. Give the ball to Saquon and get the hell out of his way until he shows that he can't do any damage.
I think that's going to be a very interesting thing to say. By the way, the regression of Hurts also started at the beginning of last year. He started getting a lot looser with the football, and I think he's forcing a lot of things more. He's forcing the ball a lot more than he should, and I think that's one of the reasons also why you're seeing that stall regression. This is a guy who needs to make better throws out there, and his legs, his dual threat ability that he still has is still his best weapon, but now it's kind of becoming more one-dimensional. And I think sometimes we say this guy needs to learn a pro-style offense. He might want to continue to learn what he knows best, because you continue on this path, you're going to just drop down to a mediocre quarterback. And once you lose weapons like A.J. Brown, like Devontae Smith for any period of time, that's not going to help you. And you had all of those weapons yesterday. You put up 17 points against a team that is in very huge turmoil right now. So I am concerned about what I've seen from Jalen Hurts over the last few years, but I think there is still a lot of potential to get it back to, if not at the MVP status that he was in 2022 or near it. He has to get anywhere close to it for them to have a chance to win this division. Because the best quarterback in the division does not play in Pennsylvania. It plays in the Beltway in Washington, D.C. And I'm proud to say that, by the way. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. The New York Jets, go Tigers. The New York Jets with new interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich saw his Jets face off in a matchup with first place on the line against the Buffalo Bills. Wait a minute, an interim head coach in a first place matchup? Maybe the firing was a little too brief. Who knows? Despite a very valiant effort, the only team that New York is actually proud to claim right now, the Buffalo Bills, pulled out a 23-20 win and brought themselves up to 4-2. Next up for the 2-4 Jets is a date at the house formerly known as the Big Ketchup Bottle next Sunday night against the 4-2 Pittsburgh Steelers. Don't worry, Jay. I will not call it by its God-given name now that
Thank you.
That it's been brought
Appreciate
rights
that,
to.
partner. I really do.
No problem. No problem. And now, why don't you tell me what the Jets need to continue to do, especially against your Steelers in week number 7?
Yeah, I mean, to me, and the game literally just wrapped up. Tough loss, 23-20. But here's the thing: this was very much a tale of two halves for the Jets offense. And as Rabbi, as you said to me as we were coming out of the opener, where I thought I was going to have to eat my words with the first half that Rodgers put up. Second half, yeah, the other direction. So they need to replicate that first half. And these are some of the numbers that kind of jumped out at me. Rodgers in that first half, 13 of 17. It's a 76.5% completion percentage, 192 yards. It's 11.3 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 2 sacks. His passer rating was 152.1. And he showed us once again that one of the things that he can do as well, if not better than any other quarterback, is the Hail Mary hitting his old Green Bay pal Allen Lazard with a 52-yarder to send the Jets into halftime with that touchdown. The first half, I mean, think about the 3 skilled position players that are kind of the focus of this unit. And they had first half that you're kind of looking for. Garrett Wilson, 6 targets, 6 catches, 68 yards, 11.3 average, 1 touchdown. Allen Lazard, 4 targets, 3 catches, 67 yards. That's 22.3 yards per catch. Granted, the bulk of that was the 50-yard Hail Mary. But give credit to Lazard. He went up and he brought that down, high-pointed it with a plethora of Jet defenders around him. Breece Hall, 85 yards from scrimmage in the first half. 8 carries for 40 yards on the ground. That's 5 yards a pop. 2 catches for 45, 22.5. The team, 225 yards of total offense on 30 plays. That's an average of 7.5 yards per play. They were 1 for 2 for touchdowns in the red zone. The 17 points they scored in the first half against Buffalo, the most points they have scored in a first half all season. That is kind of what they need to look to replicate, and they couldn't even replicate it for a full game. You look at the difference. The second half is reminiscent of what they have been the 5 weeks prior. Rodgers in the second half, 11-19. That's that's a tick under 58% completion percentage. 104 yards passing. It's 5.6 yards per attempt. No touchdowns, 1 interception. That was on the Jets' final drive that ended any hope they had of even tying this game and sending it in overtime. He had 1 sack in the second half. His passer rating dropped from 152.1 in the first half to 98.8 for the game. Garrett Wilson in the second half, just 4 targets, only 2 catches, just 39 yards. Yeah, it's 19.5 yards, but it's only 39 yards receiving. Allen Lazard, 3 targets, caught them all, 47 yards, 15.7 yards per catch. And as much as we want to talk about how the Rodgers-Wilson connection needs to be the thing that drives the Jets' passing attack, Rodgers is the epitome of if he doesn't trust you, he won't go to you. Lazard is the guy he goes to. It doesn't matter that he's not wide receiver 1, and that's also an issue. Breece Hall, 84 yards from scrimmage in the second half, but 9 carries for 71 yards on the ground, but 42 of those came on 1 carry. Other than that, that's 8 carries for, do the math here, 29 yards. That's barely over 3 yards a carry. He had 4 catches for 13 yards. That's 3.3 yards a reception. Not going to cut it. Second half, just 168 yards of total offense on 29 plays. That's 5.8 yards from plays. A huge drop. 0 trips into the red zone. Couple of missed field goals. Just could not get any consistency on offense in the second half. A couple of tidbits that jumped out at me, and then I'll wrap this up for you guys. Tonight, the Jets had 15 plays that gained 10-plus yards. 8 of them going for at least 20. That's what you want to see. 9 of those 15 plays, 5 of those 20-plus yarders came in the first half. They had just 6 plays in the second half that went for 10-plus yards, 3 for going above 20. Rodgers snapped one streak, kept another one going. The streak he continued. He has had no 300-yard passing game since week 14 of 2021. He fell 6 yards short tonight with that flounder in the second half. The first quarter touchdown that we saw, Rodgers hitting Garrett Wilson, that snapped an 0 for 25 streak of not scoring a touchdown on a drive started in their own territory. We saw we saw what this Jet offense can be, what we think it should be in the first half. But again, the second half we saw is, I think that's more indicative of who they are and who they've been up to this point. Yeah, look, Rabbi, we talked about it. As you said in the opener, the Bills defense has not exactly been the Steelers defense, if you will. So you're going to get some plays against them. But if you can't put together any type of consistency on that offense for a full 60 minutes, and we didn't see it tonight, the Jets aren't going to go any further. That first half, that's the goal. That's what you're looking to get, but you need to get it for the full 60 minutes. Almost there, but almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, and there are no moral victories in the NFL.
Only a 2-4 record, which is kind of what the Jets are right now. And I think a team like the Jets kind of need to play pretty much flawless. Like, you can play half of that game if you're playing a team like the New England Patriots, but if you're playing a team who is got Super Bowl aspirations like the Buffalo Bills, you need to be more consistent from half to half. And I think right now that team is getting there, but their margin for error, at least for being a possible division champion, is pretty much out the window. They need to get on a run quick. This is a must-win game on Sunday for their playoff hopes, and I really don't think I'm being facetious.
Hyperbolic, however you want to pronounce it. No, you're not. And Rabbi, since you referenced the great Mr. Berman, I'm going to throw in another one of his isms tonight. It wasn't exactly a lights-out performance by Josh Allen and company, but as we all know, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. They circled them, they came out with a W.
Like, they circled the Super Bowl and never actually parked their car in the Super Bowl lot. They always get themselves right near the beginning. Well, so that's what they meant.
Done playing off my start. Well,
what
done.
They meant. Anthony, you could just see the Jets penalties again. This is the most penalized game from combined, by the way, this season for two teams. But yeah, is that the way you're going again this week for think it needs to be fixed?
Well, that's definitely part of my negative angle here, and both teams got 11 penalties. So that just tells you how much of a inconsistent game both teams played. Jay, you point out how the offense did so well in the first half, struggled in the second half. The Jets defense was the polar opposite. They got punched in the mouth for most of the first half by the Bills offense. The Bills was 3 for 4 in the red zone. And in the second half, they played much better. They were able to slow down Josh Allen. Josh Allen threw for over 127 yards in the first half, and his quarterback rating was 123. They definitely slowed that down. They held him to 215 yards total. Most of that was dink and dunk passes. The two touchdowns that he scored was in the first half. They held the Bills to 3 points in the second half of the game. But again, penalties. 11 penalties for 110 yards. There are costly one on one of the Jets' final 2 drives that took away a first down. There was a pass interference that set up a Bills field goal attempt that they missed, so they dodged a bullet on that one. But the Jets has just been an inconsistent and undisciplined football team really much of the season. We've seen this from the week 1 in San Francisco against the 49ers, but Santa Clara against the 49ers, even the wins in Tennessee against New England. They benefited from a weaker opponent that couldn't take advantage of the Jets' miscues on the field. but against a better opponent, like a Buffalo, right? Much we may see Sunday night against Pittsburgh, that the Jets are going to shoot themselves in the foot. We saw it in London last Sunday morning against Minnesota. And this is a team that just cannot afford to make mistakes. They almost have to play flawless football for 4 quarters to win a game. And we've seen it so far this season. They are incapable of doing that. But one side of the ball plays well, the other side of football tends to disappear. They have not stringed together four consistent quarters of football at all this season, and it should be concerning because you'll blame the coach now. You don't find him already, so now who does the blame falls on if the Jets team can't get it together? You're 2-4 in a division that is very much still in play, but you're playing yourself completely out of it.
Yep.
And the Jets are kind of shooting themselves in the foot. They got lucky on that last drive before Aaron Rodgers threw the interception that pretty much put the game away. That was a fumble that would have set up the Bills in scoring position. And by the way, I was thinking that Aaron Rodgers and his chemistry with the receivers. Obviously, Wilson, Lazard both had over 100 yards. But again, we're seeing plays on passes where he's trying to throw it in a direction or a back shoulder where the receivers are not expecting it. And it's clear, once again, that Aaron Rodgers only trusts those two guys, Wilson and Lazard, because they make plays for him. But then it's becoming to be at the detriment of some of the other receivers and him now forcing passes like that interception. He threw it behind the receiver who was wide open, and the receiver slipped and fell down and just couldn't make a play on it. This Jet team is becoming a head scratcher right now because they have the talent, particularly on defense, to really make some noise and be a playoff team. We've seen it, but now we've seen this Jet defense be really inconsistent at times. I mean, they got ran over against the 49ers. They played okay against Tennessee. They were dominant against New England, but the Patriots are a terrible football team. Let's not give them too much credit. They make anybody they'll make anyone like the 85 Bills at this point. But the last two games against Minnesota and now tonight against Buffalo, against the quality opponents, this Jet defense, when they've got smacked in the mouth, they have not responded in kind. And even against Denver, I mean, come on. You have both Knicks struggling with a par 4 score and could not do it and could not get the close the door, get the job done. And by the way, they did not force a turnover tonight neither. So this is a Jet team that just they cannot make mistakes and expect to win a football game because this team is just not good enough to overcome their own shortcomings to win football games in the National Football League right now.
No, they can't. I mean, you talked about the difference. It's almost like the Jets defense played a completely different game than the Jets offense. As you said, Anthony, the Jets offense, great in the first half, awful in the second. As you said, the Jets defense did the complete reverse. They can't even get on the same side of the page. And when special teams is missing field goals, you're not going to get anywhere. And this is what I mean about Aaron Rodgers writing checks that this team can't cash. He's not who he used to be, but he thinks he is. And that's showing up in the near misses, the ones where like it seems like they're just not on the same page, and more often than not. And I was watching the first half on the phone with my brother before we came on the air. And I don't know if this stands out to you guys, but it stood out to me at various points where when something doesn't go the way Rodgers has it played out in his mind, the look on his face and his body language is absolutely atrocious. And coming from the guy who's supposed to be the leader of this team, that's not a good look. There was also another instance where on the sideline, I saw, they showed a shot of Downing with the play sheet in front of him. And you can clearly see he's calling in a play to Rodgers, and Rodgers turns and is looking at the sidelines, and he has this kind of look on his face. Literally the phrase I use with my brother is, why does it look like to me like a pitcher shaking off his catcher? I'm like, these are the things you need to have. You need to have more talent than this Jets team has if you're going to operate with this type of margin for error. They don't have the talent on this roster to walk this kind of tightrope every week. Even in an AFC East that's as tightly bunched as this is, where no one except maybe the Patriots, everyone except the Patriots, maybe, depending on what happens with I mean, the Jets have a chance to win this division if they can actually play 60 minutes of consistent football. They haven't shown they can do that. I can't see that changing against the Steelers. And that's not just me saying that as a Steeler fan. Just look at the way the Steelers have beaten up on inconsistent offenses this season. The Jets, to me, are another inconsistent offense.
To be fair, though, if you want to put the Jets in the same category as the Las Vegas Raiders, I have a bridge to sell you in Manhattan for that one for about
not Brooklyn?
quarter.
Not Brooklyn?
Just Manhattan. Just Manhattan. And I'll throw the one from Brooklyn for free. All I have to say is, what does the number 73, 38, and 2 mean to you? Nice record that kind of gets you pretty much even on top, more than what a Tomlin team would do. That's the record of the Steelers when TJ Watt plays. 73, 38, and 2.
Game record.
It's a game record, and honestly, one of the most valuable players in the entire league, either side of the ball. He is currently top 15 in sacks with 4.5, top tackler on this Steelers team, top 5 in tackles for loss, tied for first in quarterback hits, second in forced fumbles, and then he had that nice little peanut punch yesterday.
Yep.
Basically
you know where he learned that, right, Rabbi? You know where he learned Peanut's punch from? His high school coach also coached Peanut. That's where it came from.
He can learn everything right now. He has had a great season overall. He is just unstoppable on the field, I feel like. Again, he has 4 forced fumbles this season. He is playing on a decimated defensive line. No Nick Herbig, no Alex Highsmith, although Highsmith might be back for the Jet game this week. He is the consistency on an inconsistent team. I mean, defensively, they've also had some injuries. Like Patrick Queen also got injured yesterday in that Steelers game as well. But TJ Watt is not just, like I said, a game record. He is probably as much of a game record as Aaron Donald was for the Los Angeles Rams. He is a guy who is essentially, if there was ever like a DVO or like a war for defensive players, he would lead the league in it just because of the fact that he is in so many plays. He makes your defense so much stronger, and a guy who is going to set some records already. He, I think, had 93 sacks in his first 6 years. Only 2 other people have done that faster. He is just a machine. He got to 100 this season, but he is a machine. He covers up a lot of deficiencies somewhat on the Steelers team, mostly on the offense, which which we've talked about in the past. If you're Aaron Rodgers, you do not want to see this guy at all on Sunday, especially with the offensive line that you've had a lot during the season. A little bit better tonight, but still, Rodgers is very vulnerable to making a bad play here or there. That offense is very vulnerable to fumble the ball here or there. This is a defense that is elite. And one of the reasons why the Steelers will probably make the playoffs right now, 4-2, leading the NFC North, they're tied with the Ravens. This is a team that has been in every single game this year as well. And one of the reasons is that TJ Watt. Very simple as that. All right, guys. Well, that's gonna do it. I think there's going to be no more events taken over, so we're all good. So for Anthony Strait and Jay Kaplan, I am simply the man who qualifies as a grimace stunt double, Stephen Rabinowitz.
Purple's not your color, partner.
I need to get a purple one going on here. YouTube.com/On the Sports Lines on demand. Facebook.com/On the Sports Lines live. And Jay.
Our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where you will find a link to each new show, like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. There is too much going on in New York sports this week for me to be able to take the time to throw something up there. So while New York is the center of the sports world this week, Monday Night Football, 2 league championship games, the New York Liberty are going for a WNBA championship. And we're going to just sit back and enjoy New York being the center of the sports universe. Rangers and Islanders have kicked off their seasons as well. Knicks are not far behind.
Enjoy the madness. Knicks will kick off that season, I think, next Tuesday. So good night, everybody from On the Sports Lines.
Good night, everyone.